Okay, welcome everyone to another episode of the Marketing Interrogation Podcast. Today's special guest is Maureen Farmer. Now, Maureen is the founder of a company called WordWrite Career, and she is an award-winning executive career strategist, and that's what's on her website, and she has over 25 years of experience. What she basically does is she helps senior executives find their ideal jobs or positions. So if you're the CFO, COO, C-level executive, then Maureen is the girl you are looking for. Okay. Hi, Maureen. How are you doing?
Hello, Alan. How are you?
I'm okay. Thank you, Maureen, for being on today's show. So, just for the people who don't know Maureen, I actually met her on LinkedIn. We're on a LinkedIn group, and we I saw her name, we introduced ourselves, then Maureen sort of reached out and referred a financial advisor to me, and that was how I knew Maureen, and we got talking, and I found out that she was a fascinating lady, which is why I invited her on today's podcast. So there's a lot of great information we're going to extract from Maureen today. So, Maureen, first of all, can you tell me a bit about your background, how you came to start this company?
Sure. Well, thank you for asking. Probably a good place to start is before I started the business, might add some context to this conversation. And I worked 30 years, I guess, or so in the corporate world before I started my business. So I worked in a number of different industries, including financial services. Worked in financial services for a while. I worked in legal services, and I also worked in energy services as well. And so my background spans human resources consulting, operations, and professional development. So I designed programs and training for the lawyers here in our jurisdiction. I did that for about 5 years. So my interest in professional development and growth and personal growth comes from that foundation. And in terms of my business, I actually saw over a period of time, because people were coming to me at the very senior level, because I had worked with those levels throughout my career in corporate, and they were looking for resources for job hunting. So my vision for the business, as a result of that over a period of time, was to create a professional services firm that filled that gap in the marketplace. So where people could go to firms for legal services, they could go to firms for accounting services, having people off the street going to big career management firms wasn't so much an option for them, because those firms primarily focus on the corporations and helping the individuals inside those corporations. So the individual private person who is looking for advice on career search and so forth really had no place to go. And so that's the niche that I filled in my business. I started it about 7.5 years ago.
Okay, right. Very interesting. What type of people normally approach you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in my experience, what I have found over the past 7.5 years, there's kind of two people facing two different types of situations that come to me. The first one would be individuals who have been, let's say, rapidly promoted. They've been repeatedly recruited in their career. And all of a sudden, 25 years in, maybe 30 years in or more, they're finding themselves either without a job, or they are sensing that there's something going on at a senior level. So there could be a merger or an acquisition. There's some kind of change coming. Mm-hmm. And they want to be prepared for that. And because they're high achievers, these people are very, very high achievers. They've never had to look for a job before. They don't have a resume. They don't know how to market themselves. And they don't even know how to talk about themselves in a way that feels authentic to them.
That is surprising, considering these type of this rank, they must have interviewed a lot of other employees and staff.
Yeah, great question and a great observation. And that's what I hear a lot. Maureen, I've done thousands of interviews in my career, but I've never had to be the interviewee. I've never had to interview for anything except for maybe a media spot or something on the news, but never for a job interview. And so suddenly, when they are faced with that challenge, they become paralyzed. And in fact, it's really interesting. I know a lot of individuals who won't even start the process to look because they're terrified of the interview process. I've seen that situation, which is really unfortunate because it is a skill that anyone can learn, of course. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to forget the other type of person that will approach me will be the same type of person, somebody who's new to the labor market, and they may have been approached for a board of director position, or they suddenly find themselves without a job, and a rapid termination. They didn't know it was coming, so they sort of fulfill the same kind of criteria as the other people, except they don't have the the luxury of the time to get ready for the market. Mm-hmm. And so, it creates a bit of stress for themselves and for their families, because all of a sudden they are, they might have a severance, but they know that's going to end in a period of time. And so, which brings me to, I guess, a third group of clients who are actually the corporations who employ these executives. And if they know that there's going to be a change at the board level or the company is going to be sold, they'll start planning ahead of time for their executives, and we call that executive outplacement. So companies will hire me for that as well, but I follow the same process. The principles are exactly the same. It's just who pays me is a little bit different.
Okay, that is fascinating. I think it's probably the most fascinating thing for me is to know that actually people who are so high up and who do interviews for, I don't know, practically several a month actually struggle with this same process.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because they've seen so many resumes and so many interviews, you would have thought that they'll be an expert already.
They are an expert, though. They're an expert in their, subject matter expertise, their product, their niche, their vertical, but they're not an expert at identifying their own value proposition, and they're not an expert at identifying it, and they're not an expert at expressing it. And so that's kind of a really great segue into the services that we deliver in this firm. And one of them actually is the personal branding process. Are you familiar with that term, Alan?
Yes, personal branding, yes. But please explain, how do you help these candidates sort of brand themselves?
Well, I'll ask you a question. So have you ever in your entire life or career ever felt as though you're not quite sure how to express yourself? Like, what do I say I am? Or what do I do? And if you've ever been at a cocktail party and someone says to you, what do you do? Right? It's really easy when you're in a company to say, you know what, I'm the chief operating officer of ABC company and we produce widgets. Uh-huh. But when you're in transition, people struggle very, very much with what do I say? I have no idea what to say, Maureen. What do I say? And so the branding process actually helps to identify what the thing is that you do. And it's not always being the COO of ABC company that makes widgets. Usually it starts off with something like, I'm a business leader. I lead people, and this is what I do. And that's a very generic sort of response to that question. But a lot of times executives, they freeze because now that they're not working as the COO of ABC company, they have no idea what to say in answer to that question. So the branding process helps to identify what that answer is by, there's 3 different parts to it, but at the end of the day, it's an outreach to the executive's personal network and beyond into family as well. And we actually extract information from those individuals to identify, what is it that person, what does Alan Cheng do that is really different from everyone else? Where does he excel? And it's really interesting, and I'm sure you'll identify with this, is that everybody has a blind spot in this area. And they think that because they're so good at X, maybe they're really good at regression analysis. Maybe they can do data analytics or data science or whatever it is. that they take it for granted that they can do this. And so we identify this process, identifies the strengths that the person brings to an organization. It's a very powerful process.
Mm-hmm. So is one of the things you talk about the, what do you call it? The elevator speech, was it?
Oh, yes, the elevator speech. Oh, yeah, I struggle with that term. It's about understanding your audience and knowing what each audience needs. So elevator pitch to me sounds kind of canned. And I always say, you need to know who you're talking to in order to deliver an appropriate answer to a question like, what do you do? So if your child's friend asks you what you do, you might say, I'm a business person. If your prospective client asks you, hey, what do you do? You're going to give a different answer because it's a different context and it's a different audience.
Uh-huh.
So it's really understanding your audience and understanding what they need to know at that time. So I think elevator pitch feels to me a bit prescribed and a bit, I guess, inauthentic is how I would describe that. But yes, I guess in answer to your question, it does answer the question about, how do I answer, who am I and what do I do? That was probably very long-winded, but I just wanted to make the distinction about the audience is really, really important to understand when you're giving that answer, because it won't be, some answers are just totally inapplicable to certain audiences. So I like to make that clarification.
Mm-hmm. So the type of services you offer include, I would assume, brushing up on their resume, writing one out if they don't have one, interviewing skills, and finding their help with finding their ideal jobs. Would you say that is one of them as well?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So
Right.
do you want me to unpack that a little bit to sort of?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So typically, people say, I need a new resume, which I think most people do. I think there are some people that don't need a resume, but most people do if they're in the labor market or they are in, if they're looking for investors for their business, for example. So business owners who need to identify their own value proposition to investors and customers need to have that value proposition, that package as well. And so it starts with the branding, and the branding is extracting the information and finding the information. And then the middle part of it is actually the marketing material, creating the marketing material. So that would be the resume, LinkedIn profile, it would be the bio, it could be case studies. It could also be things like customized presentations for job interviews. That's another really big one. So it's about that whole packaging part. And then the third part of that process is the actual execution of that whole plan. Once the person has identified, their ideal type of job, the ideal type of company that matches their values and interests, etc., then we work on an execution plan to help them, go out there and find what they're looking for.
Great. Sounds really good. What are the sort of common mistakes that you see executives have when they approach you? That glaring mistake.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I think anyone in marketing will know this is lack of clarity around a target. So I see a lot of individuals who will get a phone call from a recruiter, for example. And I can say this very authentically because I've done recruiting in the past. I know how it works. And they'll get a phone call from a recruiter for a position that maybe they wouldn't have targeted had they been in control of that situation. So for example, I had a client, for example, who was the CFO of a large national retail organization that was approached by a recruiter for an energy type related position. And it took us about 4 or 5 months to do all the analysis around this. It was a very, very well thought out process, making sure that the client really understood the type of company this is and what they were expecting from him, and whether he would be able to kind of live his values in that organization, because he was very much focused on mentoring and developing his people, whereas this other company was more, very much more performance-based and very much focused on the outcomes and numbers and things like that. So at the end of that process, we decided, or he decided actually, I didn't decide for him, he decided this would not be a good outcome for him, not a good position for him. And he instead decided to start a business instead. So, so the common mistake I see is lack of clarity around what the person actually wants, and being caught, I guess, in that sort of situation where, you know, a recruiter calls and asks for a resume and is looking for specifics around, okay, Alan, what is it exactly that you're looking for? Would you be interested in a CFO role? And it's a very attractive experience to be chased by a recruiter. It feels very fun and exciting and adventurous. And I'm not saying that this happens all of the time. It does happen some of the time where it's just not the right fit for the person. And the more clear the candidate can be, the client can be on what he or she is looking for, the much easier that conversation is going to go with any recruiter or hiring decision maker. That's a really long-winded answer, isn't it?
No, another question I want to ask you is, so can you explain about the process when someone approaches you? Just like a summary of the steps of how you would actually help that executive.
Well, everyone's different, and everybody comes to this organization from a different perspective. So it really depends on what they need. So the process is such a, how do I answer that? The process is really around customizing a solution for that person. So if, for example, a client comes to us and they already have an opportunity in mind. So for example, maybe they're vying for a paid public board of director opportunity. Then we're going to skip the job search process because we don't need that piece. Mm-hmm. So it really depends on what the person, everyone's different. Some steps we don't do at all. And some clients need the entire soup to nuts process. So to simplify it, it's about identifying the personal brand. Everybody gets that process. Very few people actually come knowing that or having that work done. And then creating the marketing collateral and then executing on that plan. So really it's a simple process, but each person is going to take longer to go through that whole system than other people. So to sort of create some context around it, I have clients who I work with for 6 months and then they have everything that they need and off they go. I have clients that I work with for 9 months, for 12 months. Those are the typical levels of engagement. And then I also have clients that I've been working with over a period of time. So I'm working with somebody right now, really exciting opportunity for him. He's a senior level in a big financial organization, and he's been approached by, he's been chased actually for the past 4 years. An organization wants him to join them. And so I'm helping him go through that process of, is this the right role for me? What do I do with my stock options? What do I do with my pension? So we hired an actuary to help, determine the cumulative value of his pension. We've hired various other professionals as well to help him make that decision. And I think he's pretty much ready to make that decision. So I've been working with him, I think probably for the past 5 or 6 years. So it really depends on the client.
So are these consultations done via the phone, as in on Skype, or how is that, or an email?
Well, the important conversations happen like this, like you and I are talking right now, or by telephone, and sometimes in person. So if I do have local clients who I meet. I have a corporate office where I meet them. Today I'm in my home office, but I have a corporate office where I can meet local clients.
Okay.
Excuse me. So it really depends on where they are in the world. I'm working with people all over the place.
Right. Okay, Maureen, what do you actually call yourself? What is your job title?
Well, the official title is founder and president, but what
No,
I would
but the role you're helping people.
uh,
Yeah.
career strategist.
Career strategist.
I
Right.
think I would call it a career strategist,
Uh-huh.
um, depending on the audience I'm speaking to. So if I'm speaking to a group of business owners, I'll talk a little bit more about the business development process and how they can market themselves to be the ideal solution for a particular client or a particular client profile. So it really depends. See, it really depends on who you're speaking to, how you present yourself.
Uh-huh.
If I'm talking to an executive in a big company and they're the decision maker, I'll refer to myself as an executive outplacement consultant.
Gotcha.
So it really depends on who I'm speaking to. But in this
Uh-huh.
conversation, I would call myself an executive career strategist, and that's who we're talking about today. Executives who are in transition. They may be moving up in their organization. They may be moving out of their organization. They may be targeting a paid board of director opportunity, or maybe they want to start their own business.
Mm-hmm. Right. Time to spill your secrets, Maureen. How do you market your business?
Oh, that's an interesting question, Alan. Well, like everything else, there's no one solution for marketing. I think it has to be a multimodal process. So for me, right now, my official marketing mechanism right now is using the platform, LinkedIn platform. And after 7.5 years in this business, until about probably 6 months ago, I had never done any outbound marketing. And so that was a brand new experience for me. So I started leveraging LinkedIn to meet great people. And that's exactly how I met you. I mean, I wasn't prospecting you for a client, but we met on the platform, and we've established this relationship, and we've gotten to know each other. And the group that we met in, I've met some wonderful people, and it's been a really, really good experience. And in addition to that, the program that I'm offering right now, it's a signature service, is what I'm marketing right now to clients or prospective clients. And I'm doing all of that on LinkedIn, which is really exciting. Yeah.
How do you actually do outreach using LinkedIn? Can you tell us a bit about that?
So I recently invested in a program, and it led by Janet Clark and Tobin Slavin. And they've walked me through a process that is authentic to me in outreach. So I had never done cold calling before in my entire life. I mean, I'm an introvert, I don't do those things,
It's not very enjoyable.
What's that?
Not very enjoyable. I tried cold calling earlier on in my career. Not nice at all.
No, but you know what? I've had some good success with it over the past couple months, I have to say. So I don't call it cold calling. I call it something different, and I try to establish a warm connection to that cold call. And I've had some I've not done a lot of it, but I have done some. In terms of LinkedIn, how do I do that? Well, it's an outreach process where I identify an ideal prospective client. I have an ideal, just like my clients have an ideal company profile, right? That's what we walk them through. I have an ideal client profile. And so using that profile, I do some data mining and identify those potential executives who look like they would be a good fit for the program and somebody that I would be able to help. And so I start off with a very soft message, an introduction through the messaging, the connection feature on LinkedIn, and we establish a rapport that way. And it's a back and forth experience or interactions back and forth. And I've had some really, really good results with that. So I do the outreach, I do the follow-up, I continue to do the follow-up, and then they hire me, and then I do the fulfillment. So that's been a really great way that I've good experience in marketing my business as an outreach. And of course, like everyone else, like you, I'm sure you have referrals. And so I have a fairly large global network of clients that do refer this firm. And of course, we've got the old-fashioned website that we use as well as a landing spot for people once they found me elsewhere. The website itself, I don't use a lot for traffic generation, but it certainly is a destination for people once they find me on LinkedIn or through a referral source.
So you don't spend money on generating traffic?
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, I was working with Janet Clark and Tobin Slavin, and I invested in their program. And so having done that has produced good results. And I don't know if you're familiar with that kind of 30% rule. And I just learned that about 6 months ago, that you need to spend about 30% of your gross annual revenues on marketing. Did you know that, or had you heard that before?
I've heard of that before. Yeah. So
So
you spend 30% of your the revenue on advertising?
Not well, I guess it depends on how you define it. I wouldn't say advertising per se, but I would say marketing. So investing in the services of experts like Tobin and
Oh,
Janet.
yes. No,
And
sorry,
people
Maureen.
like,
I was talking more on the lines of generating traffic, like online advertising.
oh, not yet, not yet.
No, yeah. So all
Uh,
your traffic is free from LinkedIn.
my traffic is, that's right. Yes, I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
That is pretty amazing, very amazing. Because you hear all these stories about everyone spending a lot of money, losing money on Facebook, on Google Ads.
Yeah.
But you're doing it using just LinkedIn outreach.
Well, yes. I mean, there's another part of that. I do have a team working with me to help me do that. So I'm not doing it exclusively by myself.
Yeah, tell me a bit about your team, Maureen. What kind of people do you have on your team?
I have amazing people on my team. Most recently, I hired a virtual assistant. Her name is Madison. And so she does a lot. She helps me with a lot of the follow-up. So I'll do a lot of the legwork. She helps me with a bit of that as well. And then she does the follow-up with these people individually. So, so that's been very, very helpful. I also have a marketing company that I'm working with. They've been working on my website with me for the past 4 or 5 years. And I have, just yesterday, I was on a sailboat in the middle of the Halifax Harbor here in Nova Scotia with my board of advisors. So I now have a board of advisors, and we're all business owners. We meet every month, and we all support one another in our various business endeavors. And we have a naval architect on our team. We have a graphic designer on our team. We have an investment professional on our team. We have the owner of an IT services company. I don't want to leave anyone out. We have a property owner who owns a lot of apartment buildings, and we have an accountant. So it's a really nice mixture of people on the team that come to support one another.
Oh, that is excellent. That is really, really good. So how did you start this group of board of advisors, what you call?
That's a great question. Actually, the person who referred me into the group, I forgot to mention, he's an executive recruiter here in my city. And so he was a referral from another executive coach. We had coffee one morning about 3 months ago. He said, Maureen, you would be ideal for in our board of advisor group. Would you like to join? And it's a paid membership based board of directors, or board of advisors rather. And so yeah, so through him, I had been looking for that anyway. So I don't know whether it was coincidental or not, but he did make the offer, and I'm probably about 2.5 months in, and it's been really, really good so far. Great people, great experience, and you can't read the label from inside the bottle, so they have great feedback, for questions that I have for them, and of course it's reciprocal. I help them as well. So
yeah, it's the typical what you call mastermind, which a lot of business people talk about. You should join a mastermind of different people, different experts.
Absolutely. And then of course I have the people like the accountant, I have a bookkeeper, I have a lawyer. So I have a lawyer on my team who I can reach out to if a client has a particular issue at work. The number one thing I get my clients to do if they feel that their spidey senses are tingling, we'll have a look at their employment contract. And if there's something in the employment contract we can't quite figure out, then I'll engage the lawyer on my team to give us some help on the interpretation of the contract. And the same holds true for job offers as well. So I have a really, great team around me that helps to support the client process.
Okay, excellent. Final question, Maureen. Where can people go to know more about you and your services? So if they're a C-level executive, what can they do to reach out to you?
Oh, it's so simple. I'm assuming any C-level executive out there is likely on LinkedIn, and they can find me on LinkedIn just under my name, which is Maureen Farmer. Do you want me to spell my name?
I'll provide that on the description as well. But for people on the podcast, Maureen is Maureen, and Farmer is Farmer.
That's right. Absolutely.
So you prefer people to reach out to you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the easiest thing. I do have a website. I'll tell you what it is. It's called wordwritecareer.com. Word like the word, write like your arm, and career like your job.com. And you can reach me there as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Maureen, for being on the show today. It's been really, really interesting. It's amazing what you do.
Well, Alan, it's been a pleasure, and just a little bit of a plug for you. I listen to your podcast every week. I don't miss it, and I'm looking forward to hearing about who's on next week.
Great. Thank you, Maureen. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.